To show up on a rainy Friday morning, because I think most of us would have liked to have slept in this morning. But thanks everybody for coming. Just want to go over a couple of things before we actually get into the financial stability issues again. I thought we've had a great convocation week. We had a really enjoyable adjunct faculty resource fair and event last night. I kind of like the format we did where we have about 30 minutes together in the Hemmes rooms, and then we go out with tables and sort of carving stations and food stations, kind of like heavy hors d'oeuvres at a conference if you've been to one of those. The nice thing about it is everybody seems to hang around, and we kind of have to start running people out after 7 o'clock. So they're sitting and talking and eating, and that's kind of what we want to do and learn about the various resources of your various programs here. So I thought that went really well last night. Also, the Culinary program just got accepted to participate in the Wine and Chili Festival at the Opera House. And since we're not a for-profit restaurant, they're going to participate in the VIP tent providing testing. They got judged yesterday or the day before and asked to participate. So that's a great sign. So if any of you are thinking of going to the Wine and Chili Festival, be sure and go find them in the tent if you can get in the VIP tent. I'm not sure how that one works. Also, in this morning's paper on the front page, yesterday we had a press conference at the kids campus. Mayor Gonzalez announced his efforts towards early childhood, but also really birth to careers. The whole gamut of workforce training up to from birth to age 24, which is going to be a focus of his administration. He's appointed a cabinet or a task force. I heard both words yesterday. And so yesterday participating in the press conference were not only myself representing the community college, but also Superintendent Joel Boyle from the public schools, Stephen Jones from the Santa Fe Community College Santa Fe Community Foundation, and then we also had the whole board of the Brindle Foundation there. And that's a family foundation that has provided funding to our early childhood, both education programs and our child development center programs. I'm not supposed to call it a child care center, child development program over the last number of years. And they're actually funding a business plan that's being written right now by Mary Ann Shaning, who many of you may know. And we're trying to write a business plan to make our program what we would call a center of excellence. We have a 5-star center. We have an educational program. We're trying to link them better together, do more things to serve our community, bring in some more money. And so we're excited that we have a foundation helping us reach out and do that. So that's just a few of the highlights of some good news, things that happened this week. So let's talk a little bit about the financial stability plan, and I'm going to step you through our cash flow analysis so you can understand, I hope a little bit better, the situation we're facing and how we're going to get out of it, and what the various components of that plan are. I do want to thank many of you have sent in suggestions for ways we could save money or bring money in. Either of those is a good suggestion to make. The executive team gets a copy of every one of those suggestions. We're talking about them at our executive team meetings on Tuesdays. Some of them we've actually started to implement. We did implement some increased daily use fees and locker fees at the fitness center. And have we had any complaints yet, Uta? Have we had any complaints on the new fees yet, or have you heard?
Yeah, we have complaints.
Yeah. Nobody wants to pay more, but anyway. And we didn't get outrageous, and we're looking at a lot of the other ones. So some of them are things we couldn't implement immediately, and we'll talk about those. But thank you, and keep those suggestions coming. Also want to let everybody know there's going to be a special board meeting this Monday afternoon at 2 o'clock, and it's for two purposes. The primary purpose is we're going to submit our loan to the New Mexico Board of Finance, and you're going to see that in our cash flow analysis, and we're going to seek a loan of $500,000 from them. We have to pass a resolution at a board meeting to do that. So that was the original intent of the special board meeting on Monday, and so it's just a legal step to have a public meeting, take a vote on this resolution, and then we submit our actual loan application is due on Tuesday. And so we're doing the resolution Monday, submitting our application on Tuesday, and the board meeting of the State Board of Finance where they would consider our request is September 16th. And so we have to get everything in about a month ahead of time. That was going to be the only thing on the agenda, except we submitted, at the last regular board meeting, we approved our first budget adjustment request for this fiscal year that was based upon the financial stability plan that the board reviewed and endorsed. The Higher Education Department, and specifically the Department of Finance and Administration, had not approved our original budget yet. So they have asked us, rather than approving the original budget, which they knew was wrong, and then approving a first budget adjustment request, they've asked us just to submit that as our revised budget. But we have to formally take a vote on that on Monday too. So it basically is just a formality of approving what we included in that budget adjustment request. The same numbers will come out of it, and just call that our budget request for FY15, which is the year we're currently in. So those are the two items, the only two items that'll be on the agenda. We did make a formal request through the Higher Education Department to the Department of Finance and Administration to expedite our state appropriation for this year. You'll see that request and what that request would do for us in the cash flow analysis. We've basically said we're not asking for any more money because we can't, since there's not a legislative session that can vote on one, not until January. And so we've asked them to expedite the currently approved appropriation. And what we've basically asked is we get our appropriation 1/12 every month. And we've asked that they give us what they would have given us in April, May, and June of next year in September. And then we wouldn't get anything in April, May, or June of next year. And you'll see as I show you on the cash flow analysis how that helps us. We probably aren't going to know whether that's been approved or not until we're hoping at least by the end of next week. We have some encouragement that they're going to try to get us a decision by the end of next week. They are going to send some teams of people out to kind of audit us, ask them questions, and that's to be expected. They got to be comfortable that we really do need the money, that we do have a plan in place that will work, and hopefully we will get that funding. So this is going to be a little tricky to show you because it's going to be hard to see everything, I'm afraid. But what I want to show you here first, this top section, which I'm going to go, there's three sections. I'm going to show you a summary, and then I'm going to show you some detail. What we've done is we've come through and we've adjusted our budget, and we've taken our budget and converted it into cash in and cash out. Okay? So the very first budget we had would call for about $42.6 million of cash inflows and $45.3 million of cash outflows. That's not good. We don't have enough cash to spend more cash than we're bringing in. And I'll show you how we get to these numbers. I'm going to try to figure out how I can scroll across and show you this a little bit. But if you see, we start the year with a beginning balance. Originally, we thought it was going to be $3.2 million. I forget why that won't go away. How do I make that disappear? There we go. So we started July with $3.2 million of cash. We bring in $1.9 million. We spend $3.2 million, so we end the month at $1.9. Okay? And then that $1.9 million is the beginning balance for August. And you'll see as we move across in the months, we have a major problem in October, November, and December. We don't have enough cash to pay our bills based upon that original budget. Okay? So based upon the original budget, the original assumptions of cash that would come in and cash would go out, we would be $3.7 million negative in November. Now, we start getting better for the rest of the year, and I'll show you why when I show you the details here. So we would actually have another month that we were negative, but we'd end the year with only $1.7 million. And we need to end the year with at least enough money to cover 2 months' worth of expenses to carry us forward. And I'll show you this in the detail, and then I'll be glad to answer questions. So that's how bad it would look if we had stuck with the original budget as approved, converted into a cash analysis based upon what we knew. What I want to show you is I have 3 versions here, but I'm going to show you the last one. What we did is we've built into this one the changes that were approved by the board in the financial stability plan that were part of that first budget adjustment, which is now just going to become a revised budget. And so what we have now with those cuts in supplies and expense, taking the vacant positions out of the budget, taking the positions that were eliminated by a reduction in force, the restructuring out of the budget, taking out of the budget the dollars that are associated with the across-the-board salary cuts that people making more than $30,000 will be making, we end up having a positive budget. So with these revisions, we still have cash inflows of $42.8 million, but now we have outflows of $41.8 million. And we have some assumptions of how we get there. So you'll see is that we have revised our beginning balance number, by the way. But we originally thought we had $3.2 million. We really only had $1.9 million to begin with. These were all based upon preliminary reports at the end of June. The beginning numbers can change for a while because until the auditors finish their work, they will require us to do adjusting entries. Now, I think we've narrowed it down enough that we're not going to see any entries that affect the actual cash that's available for unrestricted purposes. What we're looking at here is just unrestricted cash. We've got restricted cash for our bond projects, and we've had to look at all those, but we can't use restricted cash to operate the college. So based upon this scenario, we get pretty low at the end of July. And in fact, our preliminary numbers may show that we went negative at the end of July. But I'm going to show you what's happened already in August that's correcting that situation. Then in August, we get positive again. And I'm going to show you what happens here. This assumes we get the accelerated monies from the state in September, and we get the loan in September. And that's why you see there's big numbers coming in September for cash inflows. But under this scenario, we're still pretty close. We only have $229,000 left in the bank at the end of November before we get to December. And on the detail, you're going to see some of this, but I want you to see the summary first. Okay, that's pretty tight for a cash flow balance. So we're going to have to do a really good job of controlling the things that we spend this fall that we can control. And you're going to see on the detail that the bulk of our expenditures fall under compensation, and there's not much control over that other than what we've already done. So we'll talk about that. But under this scenario, we would end the year with about $4.6 million in cash. Now, we're going to have to take about $2 million of that and put it towards restricted projects because we've actually borrowed some money from our restricted funds, which we can't do. But as long as we finish those projects and get the money repaid by year end, we should be in okay shape. Okay? So let me see if I can show you the detail of this last analysis. And I don't know if people can see this. Can you see that fairly well at all? Okay. So what I'm going to show you is where do our cash inflows come from? Where do our cash outflows go to? And how do they normally come in? First thing we're looking at is what ING revenues, which is our instruction in journal. That's our operating cost for the college. We are anticipating bringing about $7,594,000 in tuition and fees in this year, last year. And that includes the $5 raise in tuition effective in January. Okay? So you can see we originally had a budget of $7.3 million. We've increased it to $7.5, almost $7.6 million, because the increased tuition in January will bring some additional cash in. And we'll also bring the cash in for the revenues that we collect for next summer. Next summer school's revenues show up in next year's budget, but the cash comes in this year. Okay? So we're talking about just cash at this point in time. Our state appropriation is $10.089 million. You can see 2 lines here. One says normal. Oh, it's disappeared. Where'd it go? There we go. One says normal, and one says accelerated. Normally, we would get $840,000 $808 every month for 12 months. Okay? We're asking that they accelerate it, and so we've actually put some of that money in August, September, and October. It's probably mostly all going to come in September if this happens. And so we accelerate it, and you see at the end of the year it's zero, but we still get the same $10 million of our state appropriation. Okay? The other thing we get is we get our, and that includes it on the same line, you see a line for the Board of Finance loan. We're asking for a $500,000 loan that we're hoping to get in September, and we'd pay it back in April because we can pay it back. And the reason we're only going to ask for $500,000 is this is a revolving loan fund that only has a $2 million corpus to it. And it's really there primarily, this is where the small communities, if their water system breaks and they need an emergency loan to fix the water system, this is where they go. So we can't take all their money away from them. So the fact that we can pay it back that quick I think, will be a selling point to the Board of Finance for borrowing that loan. The other is that we get our local taxes. And we get we're anticipating just over $16 million. And this is our property tax mill levy. This is just the operating portion. We also have taxes that come for debt service for all the bonds we've sold, but this is just the portion that we get to operate. So this is our biggest share of cash to operate the college. And so normally we get this, and we've analyzed previous years. We get a little bit every month. See if I can scroll over and get some of this on the screen. We get a little bit every month because the county is always collecting delinquent taxes and remitting our share of that and so forth. But we get two really big chunks. One comes in December and January. It's usually split in two pieces. So we get about half about that. You see there's 28% and 28%. Comes in December and January. And then the other large chunk comes in June. Okay? We normally have had, and I've said this before, we've normally had at the end of June every year enough cash in the bank to carry us forward to December when that next big chunk comes in. We didn't have enough money at the end of June to do that. And you're going to see the cash outflows for expenditures here in a second. And then we have some other sources that total about $458,000 a year. We have some monies that are collected, student, social, and cultural. That's the Student Government Association fee that the students pay. It's a $1 credit hour, going up to $1.50 in January. That really just comes in and goes right back out. Public service, this is where we have our programs like the Conference Center, Kids Campus, Planetarium, the public TV station, the radio tower. We do have a little bit of income that comes from dental because we do provide some services through the dental assisting program. And the normally considered part of public service would be the SBDC. But we've actually split the SBDC out for these purposes because they have a direct line item appropriation in the state budget that comes to us. Okay? So the revenues we've projected this year from public service exclusive of SBDC is $987,000. The SBDC brings in about $4.4 million. That's pretty much a state appropriation. And then from auxiliaries, which is food services, bookstore, East Wing Eatery, we anticipate bringing in about just over $3 million of cash there. One of the things I do want to point out is this last line items that relate to the foundation. The foundation collects money and raises money for scholarships. And usually they bill us, we bill them for the scholarships for last year. So we just billed them $468,000 for the scholarships last year. Now, that normally happens even later in the year, but because of our situation, they ask us to bill them early. So we've already had that $468,000 for scholarships from last year come into the college. In addition, they've gone ahead and fronted us the scholarship monies for this academic year. So we've actually brought in another $470,000. So the foundation has brought in over $900,000 of cash in August, this month, to help us with our cash flow challenge. So any of you know anybody from the foundation, Please thank them for agreeing to do that. We would have eventually gotten that cash anyway, but they let us have it now when we really need it. So that's our cash inflows. And so you see the total cash inflows for the year are $42.8 million. Okay? And so let's show you where cash goes to. What we've done is separate this by the exhibits. So this is the way we report to the higher education department. So Exhibit 10 is where instruction is. Okay, so that's where we pay for all of our academic programs. That's where we pay for our continuing ed programs, for the teaching of them, for anything that is instruction related. And you can see the revised budget, which is like the third column. The revised budget is $13.5 million. And of that $13.5 million, 12.4 is compensation and which salaries and benefits. That's full-time faculty, adjunct faculty for both credit and non-credit programs, and a few support people, okay, for instructional programs. So of that $13.5 million, 12.4 is salaries and benefits. Okay? Internal services charges normally get allocated up to exhibits, but for this purpose we've left them unallocated in the adjusted budget column. And so what we've done, and just to show you going across here, is by month, we've gone and done an analysis. How do we normally pay our salaries and our expenses out? And so we have percentages of what goes out. We also know that we have 3 pay periods in October and 3 pay periods in May. So you'll see that there's going to be a larger number in October for compensation because there's 3 pay periods in October, not just 2. So we've done this same thing, and we're going to post this out on Jack so you can go look at it and study it if you want to. So we've done the same thing for all of our exhibits. So Exhibit 10 is $13.5 million. That's instruction. Exhibit 11, which is academic support, that's just $2.1 million budget. You know, once again, about $204,000 is supplies and expense. $1.9 million is compensation. Exhibit 12 is student support, budget of just over $3.1 million. $300,000 of it is supplies and expense. $2.8 million is compensation. Exhibit 13 is institutional support, and so that's things like the President's Office, the Governing Board, Finance, Marketing and Public Relations, a lot of those types of offices. That total budget is just over $5 million, with $4 million of it being compensation. Then we have plant operations. Their budget is just over $3.6 million. About $1.4 million is expenses. That includes things like utility bills. And then the rest is compensation, $2.1 million. And then you'll see we have the same $120,000 we collect for student government fees goes out to student government for their purposes. So that's just an in and an out. To run the public service organizations like Conference Center, Kids Campus, and so forth, we have expenditures. So their expenditures are just over $900,000, of which $810,000 is compensation. For the SBDC, their expenditures are $4.4 million. A smaller portion of that is compensation because most of that money goes to the other centers around the state that we manage through Santa Fe Community College. And then we have institutional financial aid, which is required expenditures. We have auxiliary services, these are their expenditures. And then the internal services, which is primarily OIT, general services, motor pool, copy center, some of those kind of things. Those total about $4.4 million, and those get allocated in the final analysis, but we didn't allocate it in this way. And then we have about $1.2 million budgeted in unrestricted plant funds for projects related to small capital improvements, building renewal and replacement, equipment renewal and replacement projects. So hopefully we have the same numbers on here as on the summary, but you'll see, yes we do, in November we get to the 229 as our low point during the year, and we build back up by the end of the year to over $4 million there. So there's a lot of analysis that's been done behind this, because normally when we put together our budgets, we just budget supplies and expenses and salaries and just assume that money's going to be there to pay for them. And we know we don't spend everything evenly throughout the year. And even compensation is not spent evenly throughout the year, because we have periods when we have lots of temporary employees because we staff up during registration periods. We have periods of the year when we have a lot more adjunct faculty than at other periods of the year. Regular salaries, 9-month faculty salaries, staff salaries, they kind of get spread evenly throughout the year. We do have some people that are hourly, and they might get overtime occasionally because we have peak periods. So we've gone back and analyzed, where do we spend money and when does it normally come out? And if all the assumptions we make, we know we've already implemented the cost-cutting measures. They're already in the budget. As long as we get the loan, and as long as we get the expedited appropriation from the state, we've already gotten the expedited funding from the foundation, we should be able to make it through this year and come out the other end and have our problem pretty much be solved at this point in time. If we don't get the loan, we'll go negative in November, because that 229 that we end up with is based upon getting that $500,000. We can probably still manage it just by delaying expenditures on purchases, or just being slow and paying everybody except payroll, because payroll just comes out automatically. So we just have to be careful. I know companies do that all the time. Just be slow in paying if we have to. Not something we want to do, but we will analyze who we could possibly do that with. So, questions. I know this is a lot of information, but our challenge is cash. Our fund balances look better. Our total cash situation in the bank looks better, but that's because we've got a lot of money set aside for bond projects, but they get spent this year. The Higher Education Center is going to be finished in January. We'll probably make our final payments in February, March, and April of next year, so we have to have all the cash available to do those final payments. The solar array is going online here at the end of September, so we'll have to make our final payments on that probably in October, if not November. And that's going to immediately start saving us money. But those are the projects that we've got to finish, and we can only use that cash for those projects. So, what kind of questions or further explanation? This is a quick Accounting 1 class, I think, or maybe even Accounting 2. Megan?
When you post this up on Jack, could you include brief descriptions of the category? What makes up institutional support versus public service?
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that. I had to write my cheat sheet notes because I always forget too. Okay. Yes.
Why is next year going to be okay? Is there something fundamentally changing from this year to next year, and will we have an extra surplus that will?
Well, couple things that are happening why next year works is that, number one, if you'll notice, we began this fiscal year July 1st with $1.9 million in the bank. Next year we're going to have more than that. And if we control our costs even better, I mean, this is almost worst case scenario except for the way the money flows in for this year. Those cuts that we've made that go forward with us, the cuts in supplies and expense, which we hope to restore at least partially, but they wouldn't have to be restored if we don't have the dollars. The vacant positions that are taken out of the budget and the positions that have been eliminated due to the restructuring stay out of the budget next year. It's not going to be easy, but we're going to have to manage our cash flow better. Also, in the legislature this year, we should get some increased funding because we were one of only 5 schools that grew this past year. We grew the most. And so, based upon the performance funding formula that was implemented basically last year and that they're not changing this year, we don't know what the amount will be, but we should get a bump in funding, and that should really go straight to our bottom line. Also, the best news is that valuations of property in Santa Fe County appear to be growing, and so our mill levy appropriation next year could be considerably higher. So with the economy coming back, the number of new construction projects started, the sales of property, which is now starting to move again, we actually think there's a good chance that the amount we'll get from the county will be greater than the $16 million we're projecting for this year. So, you know, those are all things that we can't count on until they happen. But I think we've gotten our budget better adjusted to the revenues that we have coming in. And, you know, we had $60 million of bond sales over the last 7 years, I think it is. It made us feel like we had a lot of cash. We did a real good job during the recession of not hiring people, not doing a lot of things just in case, because we were always concerned that the state appropriation did go down about 20% during that time period. We were always concerned about our local mill levy going down. Santa Fe was really lucky. Our property valuations really didn't go down much during the recession, and the delinquent payments did not rise as much as happened in lots of other communities. So we made it through the recession in pretty good shape. That answer your question, Robert?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. What else? Yeah.
I have a question about the $5 increase in credit hour, or per credit hour.
Per credit hour.
Might not seem like a lot to us, but what sort of analysis has been done about how that might affect enrollment?
Well, we think right now we're gonna stay flat in terms of credit hours for this year. We're still so far below other community colleges. Even with a $5 increase, we're still going to be $5 lower than CNM. We're going to be $30 plus lower than most of the branch campuses. So in comparison, we're still more affordable. It is going to have an impact on our students. A full-time student is going to pay about $60 more per semester if they take 12 credit hours. And so the foundation is working hard to raise some more money so we can have more financial aid to offer to those students. We just kind of had to share it with everybody. The Student Government Association has been very supportive of this. They also wanted to raise the student government fee even more than we decided to raise it. So that went from $1 to $1.50. They wanted to go to $3, which we didn't think was appropriate at this point in time. But it will have some impact on. One of the things we are going to look at in our budget process for next year is we want to look at going back to what we used to do and what most colleges do, and this will help students, and that is if you take 12 to 18 credit hours, you only pay for 12. If you go over 18, then you have to start paying again. And we think that will both help them take more hours without having to pay more, but maybe encourage them to complete faster. That is one of the issues. You know, when I went to college, we took 15 to 18 hours every semester. And, you know, because financial aid only requires you to take 12, most people only take 12 anymore. There's no way you can finish a 2-year degree in 4 semesters if you only take 12 hours a semester. And then it gets even compounded if you have to take some developmental courses to get along the way. So I'm hoping that in next year's budget, we already came up with analysis. It would cost us some money, but we think in the long run it might help us if we get more students to take more credit hours and to complete faster. That'll help us in the long term. Okay. What else? Yeah. Sure.
Last year's expenses were a 17% increase approximately over the previous years. Are there any mechanisms that you're looking at developing that would keep that from happening in the future?
Well, one of the things that we're doing is every purchase is being approved by, actually right now, by a member of my executive team and mostly me. Every hire is being approved by me. Any out-of-state travel, which is only going to be for accreditation, has to be approved by me. Eventually that has to change, but we're going to be hiring a vice president of finance. You know, it really wasn't that we overspent what we budgeted. It's just that the assumptions were made that we had more revenues and more cash available than we had. And so the budget, although the budget that was approved in April of 2013 had a lot less expenditures in it, and actually was pretty right on the revenues. The first budget adjustment that was done, and it was approved in December, but it was planned for months, recognized the increased expenditures that we were going to have, and so it also increased the revenues. But the assumptions of where the revenues were not accurate. They weren't there. And so, we came pretty close to spending what the revised budget was, but we didn't get the revenues. So that's how we got into this situation. So our revised budget allows us to live within our ongoing revenues. And the hope is that we'll get some extra revenues this year, which we usually do, and that they'll go to pad that ending balance. And we've got to start building back our cash reserves. We really need to have 2 to 3 months minimum cash on hand at any one time. We spend between $3 and $4 million per month on expenditures. And as you can see, most of that is payroll. Okay? So it's really hard to change without making drastic cuts. Okay. Marcia?
I think something that we have all learned the hard way is the question that was asked was about what can we do to make sure it's being checked. And I like you, I trust you, but you aren't going to be here forever, just
Right.
like others haven't.
Right.
And I think part of the problem was that the president was in charge of everything. What else is built in other than you overseeing it?
Yeah, so I won't be here forever. So we are building in other mechanisms. Number one, we've got to have the separation of duties. We are hiring a vice president of finance. We are hiring a controller. We have an interim controller at the present time. We've got to have people in those positions who speak up. Even if the president says one thing, they have to speak the truth to the board. Okay? And we didn't have anybody in that position to counteract any of those incorrect assumptions that were made. So we're doing that. We are also we did create a board finance committee. We didn't have one before. We meet regularly. We go into much more detail with the 2 members of the board finance committee. We can't have more than 2, otherwise it's a quorum, and then it has to be publicly noticed as a meeting. So we're doing that. But the other thing that we're doing is, almost 10 years ago, we purchased the Banner system. We never fully implemented it. We kept doing things on the side, outside the system, and then just put stuff in the system. And so therefore, to get reports and to do things, you can't just push the button. We ought to be able to push the button. And so I have instructed everybody that deals with the Banner system on the financial side of the house is, we're going to use 100% of the system. We're going to change our processes to follow the processes that are built into the system, unless there's something legally required in New Mexico that's different. And if we do that, if we give everybody the tools to do that, we've got to train some people, we've got to get some things fixed and set up, then we should be able to use our systems and use the reports out of our system in a timely manner. Because we didn't have all the data in our system, it takes weeks to do a financial report that we should be able to do with the push of a button. Now, there's always adjusting entries and things that happen periodically, and then there's a lot of them that happen at year end because of what the auditors make you do. But we should have a pretty close picture of where we are, and we should have exception reports. And so we're going to build those things in. It's going to take a lot of work over this year. Another situation that we don't really have, we've never had what I would call a truly experienced, degreed person that knows federal grant rules and contract rules. We've got some great people that are working really hard to keep track of all our grants and all our expenditures and bill the federal government and whomever else. But there's so many details out there and the regulations that are out there. We're going to hire somebody at that level, because we can't mess up on any of those federal grants. We mess up once, we're out of the picture for a long time. So we got to get that right. But the main thing is we're going to really start using our systems. We're going to change our processes. And there are going to be no shadow systems. And I've told groups, especially in finance, and this doesn't apply just to finance, but if I find somebody still using shadow systems, they may be looking for a job, because we're going to change the way we do things. But it also means all of you who enter things into the system, purchase requisitions, you do contracts, we're going to have to change some of our processes, and we've got to get things in very timely, and we've got to get things in accurately. We don't have definitions for all of our account codes. we're going to try to streamline the number of account codes. We have way too many. And then we're going to have some good definitions, and we're going to expect all of you who have the responsibility for inputting purchase requisitions to charge the right account. Because what happens is if you charge the wrong account, then we have to go to adjusting entries and fix it. That's a lot of extra work. And then when you run reports and you really want to see, well, what's this expenditure, you'll see in the system, no, it's a journal entry. What does that mean? Why is it a fix? You ought to be able to drill in on your reports. And for those of you who know how to do the drill down features, you should drill down and you should see, oh, this $150 was to so-and-so and it was for this. If you do it in the system the right way, you'll have that information at your fingertips. Okay, Kristen?
Can you clarify when you say shadow systems, what you mean by that?
Oh, Excel spreadsheets. So people keeping everything over here in an Excel spreadsheet and it's not in the system. They just put the summary in the system at the end. Word files. Paper files, everything has to be in the system. We put everything in the system for students, you know, grades, registration, everything's in there for students. We should be doing the same thing on the finance side of the house. And, you know, it goes back to before Banner, we had Poise. Before Poise, we had nothing. We didn't even have Excel. We had Lotus, if anybody remembers Lotus. And before that, we just had paper with 10 keys. Yeah.
We, I think, don't have centralized purchasing. Would that make a difference?
We are looking at centralized purchasing. Now may be the time to make that change. It would be a big change for us, but we might look at centralized purchasing. So that's something that's on the list to look at. Yeah, back here, Rebecca.
So when you're talking about no shadow systems, I keep an Excel spreadsheet because I can't drill down in Banner to find out what this expenditure, this money was, what exactly it was. So I keep an Excel spreadsheet that says this money, and then I can find it on Banner and go, oh yeah, that's what it was. But that's
you as individuals can keep shadow systems if you want, and I encourage you to do so in that respect. It's the people that are doing the official work. But you've got to put your request through the purchasing system in. You've got to do a purchase requisition and a purchase order. If you ever do use a P card, you've got to get prior approval for the use of the P card and get that posted correctly on a timely basis. You as an individual budget manager, if you want to keep some side information, that's fine. We ought to be able to have everything in the system in such a way that you wouldn't have to do that.
because right now you can't. I am not.
Well, and you can drill down, but it's only if it's the original transaction. Purchasing cards you can actually see better now if you haven't looked in a while. It actually shows that not just the purchasing card amount, it actually shows the vendor. So you can kind of compare those things. So we've made some improvements in the system there. But I'm talking about the people that have the responsibility for all this. That means the people inputting the first purchase requisitions or the contracts or whatever else. Do it right, do it timely. The people, as it processes through the system, use the system. It's okay for you to keep track on the side because that's one way to kind of keep check. I've always done that in the past too. Okay?
One of the things that I think in the budget is contingency, immediate liabilities. From an accounting perspective, some you know more than the amount, others you don't.
There actually are a few contingencies in there. They're in each of the exhibits. And for each exhibit, there's multiple departments. And one of the departments at the end is a pooled account. And so we do have a few contingencies in some of those places. And then we have a little contingency because we have some revenue that we're pretty sure will come in, but we're not putting in our budget. So that's the extra amount there. Okay. Yeah, Ellen?
I know that we produce lots of contracts. We produce professional services agreements, we produce instructor contracts in and out of the college. Will Banner be able to handle that kind of contracting and giving unique numbers, and is it possible?
If we used everything correctly, we did it, and we changed our processes, it should be able to. Okay. We just got to insist on doing the things the way we've always done it. It's so hard to change sometimes, but once you start doing it, it gets more efficient. It really does. It really does.
Having
Kristen?
training would be really helpful, I think, as a budget manager, I manage
Right.
budgets my whole, and I
We are going to do more training, and you know, part of it is we've got to clean up our accounts first, and there'll be training related to that. We are going to do a lot more training, and so that is something we plan to do. All right.
For any departments that do have shadow systems, is there going to be a process, a formalized process for them to work with some efficiency experts or something? Who do they contact if they say, I have a shadow system, but I don't know if this fits in Banner?
Well, let me think about how to do that. I mean, some of you that are keeping things in your own files as the way you track it is okay. It's the official systems that can have shadow systems. So when we go to print financials, we shouldn't have to take this information out of Banner and then go find this information over here in a spreadsheet and this information over here in somebody's drawer who's in the finance area. Okay, it should all be in Banner. Okay, but for all of you, I'll think of how we might address this. For those of you who do have shadow systems, you know, I don't think you necessarily want to quit doing them right now. But eventually, if we get everything right, you shouldn't have to do it, and we'll provide the training to make sure you have the information. But let's think of take a note. We'll try to figure out a way to people, you know, to let us know. I'm using this system. Is there a better way of doing it? Could we do something else? Could I get it from straight from Banner? Right.
That income would stay within the department,
right.
That kind of thing. Is that just how are we doing on that, or where do we stand on that?
We got a little sidetracked. I still hope we can do some of that. We do have a few places where we do that already, and we want to try to do a little bit more of that. That's another systematic thing that we need to set up the right way. But I do hope we can do that. This is so if you've got a department who's bringing in extra money by doing special projects, that they get to keep the revenues and spend them in the future. And so we want to encourage those kind of things, but we also want to coordinate a little bit too. Rebecca?
Speaking of the enterprise accounts, is it possible to go to individual department enterprise accounts, not for the revenues, but like we have student fees that go directly into the enterprise accounts in order to pay for like our clinical system or
right.
for DOH testing or for those kinds of things, and when it's broad, it's across the whole division. Then when mistakes are made, they're very difficult to track.
Well, we do have some fees right now that go specifically to support specific expenditures. Really happens mostly in the healthcare areas because they have to do these background checks and they have to do some kind of different kinds of testing things that go there. So part of the course fees on those goes to a specific place. In most cases, the course fees that we charge that goes along with the tuition and fees goes to the general fund of the college. And so we ask all of you as you do your request, if you need more money, to justify that request. And in some cases, we change those course fees. I don't know that we could ever get to the point of having fees for every department go just to their budget because, to be honest with you, we almost never collect enough money from course fees to cover the cost. So it all goes to pot. But we do have some that we have to track specifically, and most of those are set up. And so I would assume in your area some of them may be set up and you just don't know how it's set up yet.
Our enterprise account is division-wide.
Right.
As opposed to like a respiratory and
right.
a dental and a medical system.
Okay. I'll have to look into that because I think some of them are not division-wide. They roll up to a division-wide, but I think they may be separate. But I'll have to check into that.
Okay, great.
Okay? Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Yeah. Other questions? Yeah, Marcia.
Related to this, what are enrollment figures now compared to last year? And what are we looking at in terms of the future? Because it seems to be doing that.
Yeah, so the question is about enrollment figures. You know, I just want to let everybody know that most colleges are seeing pretty drastic declines in enrollment. We've been growing even through the summer we grew. Fall is kind of iffy for us right now. We had our second or third disenrollment for non-payment. Was that just yesterday morning? And so we lost some students, many of whom will come back. We haven't really enrolled our dual credit students yet. So I really think that our actual student credit hours for this fall is going to be pretty close to what it was last year, okay? Which would be really good.
Well, I know we used to be able to get the figures. Could you have someone put that on a banner that we could easily find?
I'll go look at that. I know Ron List, when he's here, loved those graphs. And got a report every day, and this is something I haven't looked at when I was the vice president or the president. So we can look at that. We do get a weekly report that compares, this is where we were compared to this same time frame last year in the registration process, and then compares us to where we were on the final figures. So I'm not too worried that we're going to be down. We might be down a little bit this fall. But we've really increased the number of dual credit courses that we're offering at the high schools, not just on campus, but at the high schools. So I think after we get all the dual credit in, so Marcus got to work, after we get all the dual credit people enrolled, we actually may see a number that's a little higher than last year, which would be very different from everybody else. Don't really know what impact raising tuition, $5 a credit hour, might have on some of those enrollment numbers. But we continue to look at adding new programs. We've got to continually be looking at adding new programs. We do have some funders that are very interested in helping us get the automotive program started. We have some funders that may be interested in helping us get the radiography technician training program up and going. I'm encouraging all of you to look at new things you may do, because the world keeps changing on us, and start adding new things. Technologies change. You need to upgrade, add new certificates, add new concentrations in your degrees. And so anything that, of course, is STEM focused, science, technology, engineering, math, or healthcare focused, brings us more money, because we get extra funding if our completers are STEM or healthcare programs, or if they're at-risk students. The at-risk student is easy for us, because the bulk of our students, except for the people who come in and take classes just for their own personal enrichment, meet that at-risk category. Do you have another question?
Well, part of this is that you're totally correct of where the money comes in, but then so many of us are in departments where it's just sort of this, and in order to grow, if it's not in health or computer, I realize I'm in computer, but it's different. We started addressing this a few years ago by having this marketing thing, and it addressed programs that needed extra help but that were doing good, and then nothing ever happened. So the overall figure might look better, but then in our individual programs, all of a sudden, oh, we have so many less sections, and even though we're working very hard, we need to be acknowledged of having some help, not just the places where money comes in.
Right. And we have all kinds of programs that we need to do, and we need to program. And, you know, this year the really exciting program is this area. Next year it may be another area. And, you know, the other programs stay steady and keep delivering, but aren't going to grow a lot. We have to have all these programs. The mix is across the board. So just remember, if you have some marketing needs in an area, contact marketing. We're trying to do less of the paid advertisements, but we get a lot of bang for those human interest stories that we get in the paper, where we talk about this person who created this job or is doing this business, and oh, by the way, they got their certificate or degree or learned their skill at Santa Fe Community College. It kind of becomes a side story. Those are where we actually get the most bang for our buck. So make sure you're sharing those kind of stories with marketing. And I know some of our programs actually put those testimonials on the website. I know Maria Santa Maria with the social work area does a great job of getting testimonials out there. We're trying to use more and more social media. That's not my expertise, but we've got to use more and more social media to get the words out about what we're doing. And that's one of the ways we're reaching, especially the younger audience. But it's not just younger people that are using social media. So we're open to all kind of ideas. Yeah.
I don't want to shift gears if folks want to ask more questions about this, but I had a question about security.
Mm-hmm.
It came up on the web on Jack, and then it came up at two department meetings for faculty, who is in charge or who reports to whom, and what sort of voice security has in the notification system, and the things that we'll obviously be planning for in the fall, like closures and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, security now reports to Henry Mignardo as the Director of Facilities Maintenance Operations. That's a typical place for it to be. It used to report to the Vice President of Finance, and so we've kind of been in limbo here for a while. So we're doing that. So the leader of security reports to plant operations and maintenance. They're definitely involved in all the notifications that go out, all the incident reports, and so forth. So, when we have closures, well, let's see, the first phone call I usually get is from the grounds person at about 3 a.m. And then the next person I hear from is the security person, because we usually follow what the public schools do. So they follow that situation. And then if there's a special situation, I get the phone call. I had phone calls last night. So, they're on top of it. Our security staff is doing a great job. And we still have the same people here that have been delivering the day-to-day services. Okay. Yep.
So you want a banner to work more efficiently, and you say there's going to be training, but what is the plan for the training, and who's going to be in charge of that?
Well, some of it will come out of our HR office. We're going to restructure that. Dana MacArthur has moved over from the CLE to help out with Keaching Academy, which is not just for faculty, it's for everybody. So we'll be doing a lot more training. We've got to get the systems all set up and in place first and make some changes to our chart of accounts first, and then we can really get into the training. But we will be doing some of it, probably most of it in-house. It's going to save us some dollars. So we could bring up some experts in, but we're going to do as much as we can in-house. Might even use some of our faculty and staff to help us put that together. We're doing that right now with the Office 2013 rollout. So, yeah, again.
Do we have a timetable for Banner? When do you expect it to be fully running without any, as it should be?
Well, I think a lot of the things that we already kind of had in place should be ready by the end of the year, a lot of things. There's a couple of big projects that we had to put on hold because it cost us some dollars. And so we got to still figure out how to do those things. So this will be a long-term project. It won't all be fully functioning by June 30th of next year, but I'm hoping we'll get a lot more of it up and functioning. We're doing a lot of work lately on the grants and accounting module, the grants and contracting module, and we've discovered some challenges with some of the way we've done things in the past that we have to fix that allows us to go forward. We hope that'll be actually rectified here in the next week or so. And then we'll have a new person that we'll try to hire to come in to kind of lead that effort to keep it going forward. So we're learning. We're going to come out of this a lot better shape because we're learning a lot about what we're not doing internally in terms of processing and in terms of controls. And, I am firmly convinced we're going to come out much stronger on the other end of this. Before long, we're going to be just running just real efficiently. Everybody's going to have timely reports that are accurate, that they can make decisions upon. Once we get all these things implemented, it should make a lot of people's jobs easier because we've really made our lives much more complicated than they need to be. So once we start using these systems, get them set up right, get people trained, start using them, it should just start flowing better, and then we can really focus in on the exceptions rather than every single detail, and we should get those reports really quickly. So I can already see that light at the end of the tunnel too. And sometimes you have to have, unfortunately, sometimes you have to have something negative happen to really force you to do what you should have done in the first place. So we're going to take that opportunity and make it happen. Okay? Anything else? All right, yeah.
Could you just shed some light on what's happened with the work studies? And it's, as a student, I'm a student, and it's really adversely affected me as a student worker and in my student experience. Say, going to the computer lab, and there's no monitor. 3 years ago, there was a monitor who you could ask questions. Now there's nothing. And you have to act as a police officer, as a student. And if there's a problem, you have no one to go to. There's nowhere to call. There was once a number to call. I called it. KSFR answered. And
there is a call number, right? Okay. So there still is a call number. First of all, just to let you know, student worker, the total budget available for student workers was cut 2 years ago. Okay. Never really understood the reason why, but it was cut 2 years ago. And This year we have the same amount budgeted for student workers as we had in the previous year. But we had to raise the rates. We had to raise the rates from $8 per hour to $10.66 because that's the new minimum wage in Santa Fe. We want to pay the living wage, so we felt obligated to do that. But we didn't have the money available, and now it's obvious to everybody why all summer I said we didn't have the money available, to increase that budget. So it's really up to all the areas. We've allocated hours to various divisions and various departments, and it's up to them to decide how they're going to allocate them and use them within their schools and so forth. We just don't have the money to hire more student workers at this present time. And so, we're open to ideas. We're trying to keep labs open as much as we can. We're trying to minimize that. We've hired technicians. I know we've had some work between some groups that got some student worker hours, and they're providing some services now to some other areas to do that. I'm not sure what number you were calling that gets KSFR, but we may have a different number now.
There's no phone event.
There's no phone?
No. The main one off
Which
the
lab?
East Wing Eatery.
Open lab.
The open one.
Open lab. Is there a phone? Is there a phone in the lobby there? There's one by the East Wing Eatery, I think. Yeah. So we'll look into that. But those are the kind of things we need to know about. So I don't go around looking where there's phones and where there's not phones. So those kind of needs, we like to hear those. Okay. Yep.
I'm so happy you said that. As you know, I think the student workers thing is big, and it's not being looked at as big. And it's an important part of bringing up to par in the same way as our salaries and everything else. It's equal to that because you're looking at low impact on students, but he's just one student,
Right.
and every one of them are going to be impacted.
I understand.
I'm asking you to look at it as a big thing.
It is a big thing, but I don't know where we're going to get the money. Okay? So if somebody wants to make a recommendation, but right now, the only way we get money to do anything else is we lay somebody off. Okay? We've already identified where we can cut costs. We're either going to lay somebody off or we're going to have to charge students more. And maybe we do some of both of those. But I don't know where else to get money at the present time. We went as far as I thought we could in some of our cuts and restructuring to not have big impacts on programs. And I hate to be that blunt about it, but that's where we are. And we just got to remember that. Go Carmen first.
When we looked at the student budget and the institutional portion that we put in, we looked at all the other community colleges in the state, and we put the most institutional money in, more than CNM, and they have way more students than we do. So,
Right.
And like Randy says, I'm not sure we would get more institutional funds, because we get, for financial aid, we get federal money, we get state money, and we get institutional.
So we do put a lot more institutional money in than most of our sister community colleges do. That doesn't mean we don't want to do more. And I'd love to find ways to do more. Sheila?
How does the opening of the HEC affect all this, interrelate with all this?
Well, the HEC is an operating division of the college. We will be doing a little subsidizing of the operation of the HEC from the institutional's budget this year and probably for at least one more year. But you also have to remember we're using the facility ourselves, so it's not just our higher ed partners that are going to be using the facility.
I'm curious about
Yeah.
it's counted into all
It's built in. Yes, it is in this.
Okay, it's not a whole separate thing
No,
that comes on.
it is a department budget within Exhibit 13, I believe. Okay. Anybody else? Yep, Megan.
I realize we're trying to cut expenses, but long-term, have we considered an internal auditor? Many of our problems, if we'd had a strong internal auditor or auditing department, probably given this size, which normally reports directly to the board, some might have been detected and averted.
We've talked about it briefly, and that's one of the things I want to talk about when I get a new vice president of finance on board to look at it. Once again, we'd have to find the funding to do so, but it might easily pay for itself in the long run. We've also looked at hiring our own internal attorney, because in most years we save money by having an external as opposed to an internal, because then you call on the right expertise within a firm. But we have looked at those kind of things. But bring that up when we get a new VP of Finance on board, because I want them to kind of look at restructuring our whole program, including that. In fact, put that on the financial suggestion box.
Okay.
It's not a cost savings measure, but it could be in the long run.
Okay.
Okay? And I'll share that one with the board. Okay? All right.